support each other. So that, I believe, is a great model for American Muslims as well. I'm very much an admirer of Pastor Warren's organization, and also his great spirit of outreach. He has been someone who has increased his interfaith outreach in the last number of years, and many of us have very much enjoyed his compassion and kindness and wisdom when we've encountered him. So with that, I'd like to invite Reverend Warren to the stage.
Assalamu alaikum. Now, dear friends, as globalization draws us closer and closer together, one of the most pressing questions we have to ask ourselves is, how do we deal with our deepest differences? It is a fundamental question we have to wrestle with. How do we live together in peace and harmony? And not only that, how can we actually work together, maintaining our separate traditions, maintaining our convictions without compromise, but working together for the greater good of everybody in the world? I was asked to speak to you about how can Muslims and Christians work closer together for the greater good in our world. And I will tell you that I'm not interested in interfaith dialogue. I am interested in interfaith projects. There's a big difference. Talk is very cheap. And you can talk and talk and talk and never get anything done. Love is something you do. It's something that we do together. Love is a verb. Now, as the two largest faiths on this planet, Muslims and Christians, we must lead in this. We must lead. With over 1 billion Muslims and over 2 billion Christians, together as half the world, we have to do something about modeling what it means to live in peace, to live in harmony. And there are a lot of things that we could do together, but I would tonight just quickly like to mention 4 things that I reach my hand out to you and say, can we work together on these things together? And I believe we can. I know we can. The first thing we have to do is that I call on all Muslims and I call on all Christians together to model what it means to respect the dignity of every person. The tensions that we see in our world, and we see these tensions all around us, friends, dear friends, they are not going to be solved by mere tolerance. Tolerance is not enough. People don't want to be tolerated. They want to be respected. They want to be treated with dignity. They want to be listened to. They want to be valued. And as the Holy Scriptures tells us, since we are created in the image of God, each person has intrinsic value and dignity. We may disagree over beliefs, we may disagree over behavior, but we are called and we are commanded to treat each other with dignity and respect. Now let me get real practical about this. That means that we need to join together, and I call on you, members of ISNA. We need to join together to create some kind of coalition to end stereotyping.
Authenticity, humility. Pope Francis is the perfect example of this. He is doing everything right. You see, people will listen to what we say if they like what they see. And as our new Pope, he was very, very symbolic in, you know, his first Mass with people of AIDS, his kissing of the disformed man, his loving the children, this authenticity, this humility, the caring for the poor. This is what the whole world expects us Christians to do. And when they go, oh, that's what a Christian does. In fact, there was a headline here in Orange County, and I love the headline. I saved it. It said, if you love Pope Francis, you'll love Jesus.
That was the headline?
That was the headline.
Oh.
It was the headline. I saved it. I showed it to a group of priests I was speaking to a while back.
Don't fall for it. It's a trap. It's a trick. It is deception. I pray that this helps you understand it better about what's going on. And as the Bible says, there's nothing new under the sun. They tried it before, and God stopped it. God stopped it. Confounded the languages and scattered the people. But there's coming a time that we are, it's like it can happen any day, just waiting for one event for them to implement what they need to implement. We're that close. Don't fall for it. The only way that we're going to have true peace is through Jesus Christ. Not through some fake peace being set up by somebody who thinks they're God and they're not, trying so hard to be, and they never will be. Don't fall for it. This system that is already in place, with the people as one, the powers and their principalities, with Lucifer, Satan, sitting at the top. God, Jesus Christ is going to come in. He's going to destroy all this. The stone that the builders rejected. The word is going to come. He's wiping all of it out. 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 And he's going to set up his righteous kingdom.
I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven.
You always show your best side, and evil's always on the other side. You say this is your strategy, but son, I hope you take it from me. You look just like your enemy. You're full of pride.
Paradoxically, this moment of crisis is also a one of great opportunity. And you know, I've been here quite often.
You mean to this table?
At this table. And excessive optimism is not my distinguishing trait.
No, it's not.
But
So there is excessive optimism now.
No, I don't think there's excessive optimism.
Okay, well, you moderate optimism.
I think that when the new administration assesses the position in which it finds itself, it will see huge crises and terrible problems. But it can, I could see that it sees a glimmer in which it could construct an an international system out of it. If you look back to the end of the Second World War, many people now think that the period between 1945 and 1950 was in many ways the most creative period or one of the most creative periods of American foreign policy. But it started with chaos and fear of Russian invasion of Europe and governments that were very weak and people who were very
So the United Nations came out of that, the Marshall Plan came out of that.
That's right, and NATO
came out of that, and later the Truman Doctrine came out of that later.
Right.
There is opportunity in the crisis because, repeat it for me, because?
I think because when you look at the medium-term interests and the long-term interests of the key players, India, China, Russia, America, Europe, they really are importantly parallel. That we should not look at this current situation from a posture of being paralyzed by the symptoms of crisis.
Fair enough. Within the crisis, there is opportunity. But when you talk about a new structure, I'm not sure you've used the term new world order. I mean, what is it? Is it simply a world order that's defined by new interest and new mutuality of interest?
Well, that's certainly how you have to start. And I know the view that you start by converting the whole world to our political philosophy. I don't think that can be done in one or two terms of an administration. That's a historic process that has its own rhythm.
Has it suffered a setback, A, because of Iraq, and B, because of the economic crisis?
That's what suffered a setback.
The idea of America leading and building a whole new consensus for a kind of...
Look, there are so many problems in the world at this moment that can only be dealt with on a global basis. And that's unique. Proliferation.
Environment.
Environment.
In some cases, global health.
Right. So all of these issues necessitate a global approach. So you don't have to invent an international order. And so every country has to mitigate its pure national interest by the global necessities to some extent.
Or define its natural interest
or define its national
by the global necessities.
But it cannot push its own technically selfish interests. In talking to the leaders of the world that I have met and counted in recent months, to what extent their willingness to cooperate with America has been enhanced by the very recent crises.
The economic crisis.
The economic crisis, and also the way the whole international system is evolving. And I'm not saying that leaders will be able to be up to all the opportunities that I may, as an outsider, may perceive. But I think they can start moving in that direction. And I'm actually fairly hopeful that we will be moving in that direction.
It seems to me the larger point you're making is that the economic crisis that is prevalent in the United States, in Europe, in Russia, and in China, India, offers an opportunity to make a case for something new rather than something old.
Yes, funnily enough, even the jihadist crisis is teaching everybody. It's bringing home to everybody that international affairs cannot be conducted entirely by drawing borders and then defining international politics by who crosses what borders with organized military force. This has now been reinforced by the fact that the financial crisis, which totally unexpectedly has spread around the world, limits the resources that each country has for a foreign policy geared to assertion of its own pure interests. So every country is obliged to set certain priorities, so that foreign policy now becomes an exercise into seeing whether the inevitable priorities that each country has to set for itself can be meshed in some manner to reinforce each other. Can it be done? I don't know that. It should be attempted, and I think there's a good chance of it.
What would you call this age, this opportunity, this moment?
It's a good question. I haven't condensed it into maybe the age of compatible interests.
Vice President Joe Biden calls the newest graduates of the Air Force Academy strategic thinkers as well as warriors, and the future of the New World Order.
It allows us to refocus our intelligence and military assets and resources to other parts of the world where they are needed, where we face new challenges. This is the world you are graduating into. This is what I want to talk about today with you for a few minutes. I believe we, and particularly you, your class, has an incredible window of opportunity to lead in shaping a new world order for the 21st century in a way consistent with American interest and the common interest.
During an event honoring the 223rd anniversary of Poland's constitution last night, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel said we are seeing a new 21st century world order being built, and although there are conflicts and complications, there's still hope.
I think what's more hopeful, and maybe than any other time in the history of the world, is that we have more opportunities, and more possibilities, and more resources.
We meet here at a moment of testing for Europe and the United States, and for the international order that we have worked for generations to build. I congratulate you on taking your place on the long gray line. But the world is changing with accelerating speed. This presents opportunity, but also new dangers. It will be your generation's task to respond to this new world.
Over the last 2 years, journalists and activists have been fighting a specific provision in the annual National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, through a lawsuit called Hedges v. Obama. It's called Section 1021B, otherwise known as the Indefinite Detention Clause, which gives the U.S. military the right to indefinitely detain U.S. citizens anywhere in the world, including right here in America.
This not only attacks your First Amendment rights, it attacks your Fifth Amendment rights, your due process clause, because this gives not the U.S. government, but the U.S. military the right to detain you and indefinitely with no due process.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's
academic
founders.
and author Dr. Michel Chossudovsky warned that the so-called war on terrorism is a front to propagate America's global hegemony and create a new world order. He was speaking at the international conference on the New World Order, Recipe for
What sort
War
of a
or Peace.
financial deal should Obama be seeking to strike when he travels to China next month?
No, I think this would be the time, because you really need to bring China into the creation of a new world order, financial world order. They are kind of reluctant members of the IMF. They play along, but they don't make much of a contribution because it's not their institution. Their share is not commensurate. Their voting rights are not commensurate to their weight. So I think you need a new world order that China has to be part of the process of creating it, and they have to buy in. They have to own it the same way as, let's say, the United States owns the Washington Consensus, the current order. And I think this would be a more stable one, where you would have a coordinated policies. I think the makings of it are already there, because the G20, in agreeing to peer reviews, effectively is moving in that direction.
Given this continued weakness in the U.S. economy, are people right to start to be concerned about the dollar?
Well, they are, of course, and the dollar is a very weak currency, except for all the others. So there is a general sort of lack of confidence in currencies, and a move away from currencies into real assets. The Chinese are continuing to run a big trade surplus, and they're still accumulating assets, and basically the renminbi is permanently undervalued because it's tied to the dollar. There is a diversification from assets that normally held by central banks into other assets, especially in the area of commodities. So there is a push in gold. There's a strength in oil, and that is in a way a flight from currencies.
Is there going to be sort of a tipping point, a moment at which the dollar is fatally weakened, or does it just sort of carry on?
Well, it's difficult as long as as long as the renminbi is tied to the dollar. I don't see how the decline in the dollar can go too far. Now, of course, to some extent, it's very helpful, because with the U.S. consumers saving more and spending less, exports can be a way for the U.S. economy to be balanced. So an orderly decline of the dollar is actually desirable.
Does it at some point need also to decline against the renminbi? Does there need to be some sort of a new global currency deal?
Yes. No, I believe that basically the system is broke and needs to be reconstituted. We cannot afford to have the kind of chronic and mounting imbalances in international finance. So you need a new currency system, and actually the special drawing rights do give you the makings of a system. And I think it's ill-considered on the part of the United States to resist the wider use of special drawing rights. They could be very, very useful now when you have a global shortfall of demand. You could actually internationally create currency through special drawing rights. And this is we've done it. We issued $250 billion. And that's a very, very useful step, except the rich countries don't actually need the additional reserves. So all they can do is put it in the shop window and say, we've got that much extra, but they can't actually use it. Now, I think it could be used. It could be used to provide global public goods. The rich countries could put their allocations in escrow. The problem is that there is a cost to using SDRs. It's a very small cost at the moment. It's only less than 0.5%, but still is a cost. So somebody has to pay it. And I think we have actually the means to do it because the IMF has very large gold reserves and kept in the books at a very low price. And it has been decided to use those gold reserves to the benefit of the least developed countries. So the IMF could actually pick up the cost of paying for the special drawing rights.
Using its gold reserves.
And in fact it's being done. It hasn't gotten any publicity. But I understand that in Istanbul a deal was signed where I think the UK and France actually transferred $2 billion of their SDRs, or $2 billion worth, or 2 billion SDR worth, or to the least developed countries, and the IMF picks up the cost. So it's a road that's already been used, and it could be used on a larger scale.
And what about the American concern that aiding and abetting this move away from the dollar as the world's reserve currency ultimately means a weakening of the U.S. economy?
It is not necessarily in our interest to have the dollar as the sole world currency, because as the world economy grows, it needs additional currency. And if the dollar is that additional currency, it means that the U.S. has to have a chronic current account deficit, and that is not appropriate. So I think it's in our interest as well to reform the system. I think this is a healthy, if painful, adjustment that the world has to go through.
If America doesn't actively take part in this sort of renegotiation of global finance, what will happen? What's your nightmare scenario?
Well, the Chinese will go bilateral. They already do it. They already have a clearing arrangement with Argentina, and I think they're working on one with Brazil, and you will find that there will be more and more bilateral arrangements. So the dollar will remain the main international currency, but its use will decline. So I think that a world of bilateral relations is less desirable than a continuation of a multilateral system. But the system we have now has actually broken down, only we haven't quite recognized it. And so you need to create a new one. And this is the time.
What began 21 months ago in the depths of winter cannot end on this autumn night. This victory alone is not the change we seek. It is only the chance for us to make that change. And that cannot happen if we go back to the way things were. It can't happen without you, without a new spirit of service, a new spirit of sacrifice.
A new spirit of sacrifice.
So let us summon a new spirit. And all those watching tonight from beyond our shores, from parliaments and palaces, to those who are huddled around radios in the forgotten corners of the world, our stories are singular, but our destiny is shared. And a new dawn of American leadership is at hand.
And a new dawn of American leadership is at hand.
So tonight, let us ask ourselves, if our children should live to see the next century, If my daughters should be so lucky to live as long as Ann Nixon Cooper, what change will they see? What progress will we have made? This is our chance to answer that call. This is our moment. This is our time to put our people back to work and open doors of opportunity for our kids, to restore prosperity and promote the cause of peace, to reclaim the American dream and reaffirm that fundamental truth that out of many we are one.
Today, an attempt to foster more understanding and acceptance between Muslims and Christians around the world. For the very first time, Washington's National Cathedral hosting a Muslim prayer service. Riff Jenkins reports.
We can pray together, we can find common ground together, and we can work together towards a better world and not just focus on our differences.
This is the National Cathedral, America's national house of prayer. And today, for the first time in history, Muslim worshipers leading prayer at the cathedral.
This has a symbolic meaning for the political and civic imagination of America.
Harris Tareen is the National Director of the Muslim Public Affairs Council.
Let me explain the call for the prayer. The call for the prayer, it is being done in Arabic, and I would like to thank the Dean and Reverend Jean for inviting us today in this place, beautiful place of worship.
History was made today at Washington National Cathedral, but not without some controversy. That's because the historic moment was a Muslim prayer in the Christian cathedral. Suzanne Kennedy's live there tonight with what spurred the Episcopal place of worship to open its doors to another religion. Suzanne.
Gordon, normally on a Friday, Muslim prayer services will be held around the corner here on Massachusetts Avenue at a mosque and at other mosques throughout the metropolitan area. But today those services were held here, and they made history. The call to prayer came at high noon in the north transept of Washington's National Cathedral. Nearly 200 people gathered for a historic Friday prayer session at the nation's house of worship.
It feels good. It feels welcoming. It feels inclusive.
The idea of the service came during last year's memorial for Nelson Mandela.
Welcome to Washington National Cathedral.
Reverend Gina Campbell, along with the South African ambassador, created and planned the event.
It's been a willingness to be humble. It's been a willingness to have your heart stretched. It's been a willingness to be made deeper and just hold open a space for God to do God's work.
Muslims from across the country came to the 2-hour prayer session, which was briefly interrupted by a protester.
Jesus Christ is our
This
Lord.
event of solidarity, it's just beautiful to be a part of. I see it as communication, as a sign, as a message from God himself for the world.
If we continue to do this, it really can have an impact across America in the way that we interact with our neighbors and just our communities.
It's uncertain whether another prayer service of this type will be held here at the National Cathedral, but as the Reverend who organized it told me, we will pray about our prayer and see where it leads us. Reporting live in Northwest Washington, Suzanne Kennedy, ABC 7 News.
We're committed because it's in our interest, but it's in the interest of our partners. We've been a Pacific power for a long time, and we continue to be one, and we will be one.
Finally, you have a unique seat in the world, a great place to see the world from, and you've got a unique history. You're a soldier, you're a senator, now you're a Secretary of Defense. What is the thing that concerns you most about what you see in the world at the moment?
Well, I think it's the dangerous unpredictability of a world that is, I think, trying to define a new world order. We've never seen such diffusion of economic power. More people have more say, as it should be. And after all, isn't that why we fought a couple of wars? To give more people more opportunities to be unleashed from dictatorship and authoritarian governments. We are seeing a new world order being built in the early 21st century. The United States of America has some responsibility to help lead that. We can't dictate that order, nor can any country, but we can help shape it. As other countries, I was just in India. Look at what's happened in India, Indonesia, all of your neighbors in this area. have a tremendous say in the outcome of world affairs. And that's, quite frankly, as it should be, but that also complicates outcomes.
Secretary Hagel,
Peace
thank you.
will not be achieved without our every effort. Peace will be reached when everybody makes it their duty to become a messenger of peace for their nation and their societies. Today, we are not only here in our professional capacities, but as those who carry the heart of a peace advocate within us. World peace, we the youth believe, can only be achieved when all aspects, when all people come together as one. And in the past 3 days, you have seen that the youth, we have done all we can within our capacity. But we are looking upon the leaders right now, the leaders of the international community, the politicians, the lawmakers, and the religious leaders to help us fulfill this goal. Signing this agreement, it may not bring peace immediately, ladies and gentlemen, but what I'd like to say is that it is a step in the right direction, and the youth need your help. So now, we will proceed with the signing ceremony of the Unity of Religion Agreement. The Unity of Religion Agreement is a groundbreaking promise of religions to unite unconditionally and without discrimination to achieve true peace. I would like to call upon the following religious leaders to come up to the stage and join us for the signing of the ceremony of the Unity of Religions Agreement. First, Archbishop Martin de Jesus Barahona to please come up to the stage. Also, a representative of Holiness Sharukirti Panditak Haryavari Aswam Swati Shri Bataraka to come to the stage. Also, from the Islam Shia faith, El Sharif Muhammad Hassan El Armini to come to the stage. From the Hinduism faith, His Holiness Swami Shidananda Saraswatiji Maharaj, the Guru of India. From the faith of Buddhism, Representative Dr. Ashin Nyanisara, founder of the Sidaku Buddha Vihara. Would you please make your way to the stage? From the Catholic Church, Archbishop Antonio Ledesma from the Philippines. From the Anglican Church, Archbishop Patricio Enrique Viveros Robles. From the Sikh religion, Singh Sahib Jana Gurbacha and Singhji. If you could make your way to the stage, please. From the Jewish faith, Rabbi Jeremy Yehuda Milgrom. From the Zoroaster faith, Dr. Meher Master Moose. And from the Baha'i faith, Dr. Bharati Gandhi. At this time, we would also like to call upon the host of the World Alliance of Religions Peace Summit. Firstly, Mr. Man Hee Lee, the chairman of HWPL, and also Ms. Nam Hee Kim, the president of IWPG. Let's give them a great applause. While the proceedings continue on stage, we will conduct the signing ceremony of the agreement to propose the enactment of an international law for the cessation of war and world peace just below stage with our delegations, and to establish peace, for the heritage of peace to be brought to all generations. We must do everything in our power to end all wars on this earth and to establish world peace according to the will of the Creator, God. Therefore, all religions must unite under God as one. We pledge in sight of God, all people of the world, and the peace advocate, to become under God through the unity of religion. We hereby acknowledge that we must be recreated through God's seed, so that we might be recognized as the family of God.
Jesus Christ is going to come in. He's going to destroy all this. The stone that the builders rejected. The word is going to come. He's wiping all of it out. 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 And he's going to set up his righteous kingdom.